everyone, this is Heather. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to be making a cute little witch Halloween card. I wanted to make a card that had a little bit of a softer look, so I'm going to be coloring my images with chalks. I'm using stamps and dies from Hello Bluebird. I'm using their new Frightful Little Bits with its coordinating dies. I'm also using stamps from their Tabitha set and its coordinating dies. And then I'm also using the tree dies from the Winter Woods die. The panel on the front of my card covers my entire card base, so I wasn't really too concerned about what color I used, but I wanted to use something that was pretty similar. So I've got a very pale blue card base, just an 8.5 by 11 cut score folded in half. I've gone ahead and taken the tree die, and I've die cut that from some gray cardstock from Memento that has a little bit of a whitewash and texture to it, so it's perfect for trees. I have another little strip of that gray for my sentiment. And from the Tabitha set, I've gone ahead and cut out a little orange moon. I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock for some ink blending. It's the same size as the front of my card. And for my images, I've got most of them on 110-pound weight white cardstock, except for the ghosts, which are on some vellum. On all of my stamp pieces, I embossed them in black, so I applied my powder tool. Then I inked and stamped in clear Versamark ink. Poured over black embossing powder, and then heat them with my heat gun. And hopefully you can see on camera that that gives me that nice, slightly raised, shiny black outline. For my sentiment strip, I'm just going to trim off the edges and set it aside for now. To get this really soft look for my coloring, I'm using chalks. You will sometimes see these referred to as pastels. For stamping and scrapbooking, they're usually sold in these little squares. You can get them in sets or in larger sets that have little individual cases for each color. Chalks can be applied with several different types of tools. You could use your finger, a small sponge applicator, a Q-tip, an eyeshadow applicator, whatever you've got on hand. But one thing about chalks is that once you apply them, they're very powdery, and if they don't have a fixative or you don't set them, they can easily rub off. So you could apply the chalks and then spray a clear fixative over the top, or you can apply them with something that will work as a binder and a fixative to get them to stick to the paper without easily rubbing off. My favorite tool to do this with is a blender pen. There's lots of different blender pens on the market that work with different pens, pencils, markers, so give it a try with whatever you might have on hand. This is the blender pen from Zig. This goes with their Clean Color Real brush markers. So basically what this is like their pen, but it's clear. So all you have to do is rub the brush tip over top of the chalk and pick some up, and then apply that on your paper. And just go back and forth, picking up the color and spreading that around, kind of similar to what you would do with watercolors. I'm going to be using 2 different shades of the same color to add some shading and shadowing to my images. So I'm starting off with the pumpkins, and I'm going to color them in this lightest shade of orange. And then I'm going to move on to the darker shade and pick some of that up and add it to kind of the top and the bottoms and sides of my pumpkin so I can get some darker areas. Try not to get too much chalk on your brush, so then it can just kind of clog it up and that clear blender solution won't be able to flow out very easily. So those 2 colors together have made some really subtle shading and shadowing. One of my little ghosts is also holding a little pumpkin, so I'm going to add just a little bit of this darkest orange shade on that pumpkin there. In between changing colors, you want to make sure that you clean off the previous color from your brush tip really well. So I'm just using a paper towel. The tip of your marker might be stained a little bit, but as long as no color's coming out, you're ready to move on. Next, I'm using 2 of the purple shades in this set, and I'm using the lightest shade. I'm going to completely fill in the little witch's dress. and then also the band of her hat. Next, I've gone into this darker purple to add some shading and shadowing. And as you can see, this works very similar to if you were watercoloring. And then also with this darker shade, I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the brim of her hat. If you feel like you have too much color, you can wipe off that tip and go back in and blend that out a little bit. So you can really kind of layer this up and water it down or add more color as much as you would like. I've cleaned off the tip of my brush and I'm going in and adding just a little bit of green to the top of each of these pumpkins. I've cleaned off the tip of my brush and I'm using a very pale peach color for the skin on my little witch. I'm going to color in her face, her legs, and her hands. And then I'm going to go in with a darker shade of pink and give her some cute little cheeks. For her hair and the broom, I'm using two brown shades. The first is a very soft, sandy brown. And I'm also going to do the bottom of the broom. And then I'm going to go into this darker brown and color in the broom handle. Add a little shading and shadowing to the broom. And do the same to her hair. I'm just going to kind of follow along these stamp lines and give her some nice texture in her hair. I'm going to go into just one more slightly darker shade of brown just to give her hair just a little bit more contrast. The rest of my remaining images are going to be colored in with gray and black. So I'm going to color in every image with the pale gray. I'm going to leave the ears of the bats and the cat uncolored. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of the black and go in and do some shading and shadowing. If it's too dark in some areas, I can go in and kind of blend that out. Then on the cats and the bats, I'm going to go back in with this dark pink shade and color in their ears and give them some cute little pink cheeks. Now that I have all my images colored in, I'm going to go ahead and die cut them all out. So I'm just going to place the die cut over top of each one, tape it in place with a little bit of washi tape, and I'm going to cut all these out. So here are all my images after they've been die cut. And one really fun thing I wanted to point out about the Tabitha set is that the die cut cuts the slit in her hat, so it's really easy to slip onto her head. For my background panel, I wanted to do a little ink blending and some splatter. So I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. It's been cut to a little smaller than the size of my card panel. And I'm using some Harmony Water Reactive Dye ink from Spectrum Noir. This is their baby blue. And it adds a really soft, subtle blue-gray color to the background. So using my blending brush, I'm just going to pick some of that color up and just completely cover my little panel of Bristol. To add some more texture to it, I've got my water bottle and I'm going to add some spritzes of water and then tap it off with a paper towel. It'll give even more texture. And for some splatters, I've got some Weathered Wood Distress ink. I'm just going to blot that onto a stamping block. Any non-porous surface will work. I've got a big paintbrush and a lot of water. I'm going to pick up that ink and then I'm going to tap and splatter that onto my background. And you can let this air dry or hit it with your heat gun to speed up the drying process. With that same Weathered Wood Distress ink, I want to add a little bit of inking around the trees that I've die cut. So I'm going to take my brush, just kind of softly swirl that around the edges and up into the branches to give it a little bit more dimension. And then I'm also going to add just a little bit of that color around my sentiment. And now I'm ready to start assembling my card. I'm going to place that Bristol panel on my cardstock front. I've applied adhesive to the back of the trees. I just want to line that up around the edge of my card. I placed foam tape on my little girl. I'm going to put her in the scene. And I've also got foam tape on the back of the two pumpkins stacked together. The other little pumpkin just has regular adhesive, and I'm going to kind of slip him under a little bit. In the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to kind of slide the sentiment up underneath some of the branches. Put that in place. And add one of the little bats on foam tape down below. And place the other little bat close to the witch. He's also on foam tape. And I've got some adhesive on the back of the moon, and I'm going to just kind of slide it up under those branches. And push that in place. I flipped my little ghosts over, and I've got a glue pen, and I'm going to completely cover the back of that vellum paper with the glue and place those little ghosts in my scene. And I really love how the vellum on these ghosts let the scene shine through, so it looks like they're semi-translucent. And here's our finished card. I really love this little scene and the softness that coloring with chalks will give you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe, and I hope you have a spooky day. Bye!